to the football. We'll start with the agony of agonies. Manchester United won, Arsenal won. Just a massive clash in memory and nostalgia, really, only if we're being honest. Arsenal, a distant second in the title race. Manchester United living out their worst Premier League season ever in full public view. They're like a football in Grey Gardens. Just every week another agony. A club in really Hasselhoffian freefall, disrepair, distress, the bench filled with children and an emasculated Hoyland, fan demonstrations filling the streets around Old Trafford before kick-off with green smoke billowing, a protest to say that their club is, quote, slowly dying. And I read that, Raw, and I thought, aren't we all in a way? It actually reminded me of the Philip Larkin poem, Nothing to be Said, which contains the incredible line, life is slow dying. I mean, Raw, we are all slowly dying, but it has to be said, Manchester United pre-game just felt like they're more slowly dying quicker than the others.
Yeah, they're slowly dying in public more as well, I think. They're making a bit more of a show of it. They're kind of slowly dying whilst running around with their trousers down. That's kind of the problem. It has been a season in which Manchester United have found quite inventive ways to find new lows every single time you think they've hit the bottom, and that this must kind of be the trigger for some sort of, not even renaissance, but some kind of journey back to dignity. They managed to scupper that and burrow beneath even where they were. It has been, I kind of thought for a long time that United's sheer size, like the wealth of the club, probably inured them to maybe 10th being the worst that Manchester United could possibly finish. The lowest that United would hit would be finishing just in the top half of the Premier League. There was a point, not in the last few weeks, but it was a point a little while ago where it looked like, United could feasibly be in an actual relegation battle. And that is, we know all the failings, we know all the shortcomings, but given that it is one of the richest football clubs in the world, that is genuinely astonishing.
It's an achievement. Too big to fail, but not too big to flail. I mean, the highlight of a fairly missable first half in which United dropped deep and played like the away team was when their own fans sang, "We want Glazers out," and the Arsenal fans harmonised back, "We want Glazers in." It was beautiful. Old Trafford, once vaunted. I think there have been losses in 5 of the last 7 games there. John Champion had a great line in the opening. He said, "United out of sorts, Arsenal out of strikers." Bukayo Saka, Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus all out. Honestly, I feared they'd used up their entire allotment of March goals when they smashed PSV 7-1 in the Champions League. They took the field with Mikel Merino again leading the line, Ødegaard doing everything in the initial stages to try and set him up, but they couldn't summon the finish. United had so little in terms of an outball. It was mostly just like Garnacho running at pace, their only threat. That midfield, Eriksen, Casemiro, Bruno, pass through at will. And Old Trafford in that first half felt what they used to sing about Arsenal, a library. They hadn't summoned a shot on goal until the 47th minute when, right before half-time, a divine moment of inspiration to remind the football teachers us of how little we all know. Bruno Fernandes stepped up to take a free kick, went right up and over the wall. Christian Eriksen laughed post-game. The wall was positioned 15 yards away, quote, by the referee. Raya had thought the wall would protect him. He dropped it right into that open spot. He does that so well. At times, United looked just like an NFL team with a really, really good field goal kicker, like a Portuguese Brandon Aubrey. Raw, Bruno's so good at 2 things, free kicks and these slides. Amorim said post-game, "We need more Brunos." Suddenly, though, United 1-0 up off an expected goals of 0.09, and thus United had a half-time lead for the first time since December the 1st.
And that must have been a frightening situation for them. They must have been very worried by kind of
what
this new reality. Sort of Amorim wandering around saying, "I'm not sure what to say here." Well done. He won't have learnt those words in English yet. There's been a lot of negativity around United's performance, especially in the first half here. And the easiest sort of conclusion is to say this is not what Manchester United should be doing, that obviously at home they should be asserting themselves. You want to see them dominate the ball.
Attack.
But I think over the last few months, these first few months of Amorim's reign, that's when United have looked their best. That is kind of what United should be doing, is sitting in, accepting their limitations, waiting for an opportunity. I'd say that if you're looking a little bit for the kind of the glass half full aspect,
please.
In that first half, Arsenal didn't really create anything. They had one or two openings, nothing earth-shattering. It wasn't like United were hanging on like Liverpool in Paris last week. That United kind of shut the game down, and they've done that a few times under Amorim when they accept that, you know what, they don't have to play to their history. They play to what they are now. They sit deep, they kill the game, they stifle their opponents, and they wait for either Bruno Fernandes or, when he's fit, Amad Diallo to do something. That is Manchester United's route to success at this point.
God, the new chant that will grip Old Trafford: defend, defend, defend. I love it. I mean, Arsenal, by the way, adopted the position. They lumbered forward again into that second half. They created one snatch miss chance after another. They were honestly in total control, apart from when they weren't. United summoned a guile on the counter. Could have stolen two more goals. There's that thundered cross, which Raya's foot kept out quite brilliantly off a Mazraoui delicious crack. A guile-filled Xerxes back heel almost sneaked in. That probably would have made the world end if it had gone in. Arteta left exploding on the sideline. Wanyeri off. Martinelli flung on, Calafiori off, Lewis Skelly on, but it didn't matter. By the way, Raw, even the Nicholas Jova corners, you don't get out your seat for them anymore. The vaunted Arsenal corners. Arsenal haven't scored off one of them since December.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? No one's sort of blaming Nicholas Jova for that, but you think if all that praise was worth it back in October when he was the man who'd reinvented football, it's not great that you can't score from corners anymore. There was quite a good free kick one in the second half where they all sort of started outside the United players, really far away, and then they marched in like go-go dancers and took up a position next to one of them. It was a beautifully choreographed routine, and then the ball came in and they didn't win the header.
That dance they do where they all line up in a line, offside, and then regimented, snap back and then charge forward, that they did in the first half of the season so proudly. It's almost, this is me projecting clearly, but it almost feels shame-filled now when they've done it, like 80 times about it. Oh, here we go again. They're all onto us. You can almost feel just a lack of confidence, whereas in the first quarter there was only a surging belief.
Increasingly, I do wonder whether Nicholas Jova's natural next kind of career move is to kind of go and be Taylor Swift's choreographer or something. That feels like
either that or Watford manager.
What he's maybe pitching for. I think maybe a move away from football. He's great at getting people to move in lines, in patterns. He deserves to be on the stage.
He's a systems analyst.
He's a systems analyst, but he should be deployed, for Rihanna.
God bless. Oh, the Chicago Bears as the special teams coach. This is your future, Jova, should you choose to take in. Arsenal left holding out for a hero like Bonnie Tyler. Declan Rice took the ball from Timber, unmarked in the box. Just catch and release, really, like an NBA three-point shooter. Straight in the corner of the net. By the way, the hardest thing in football, goal scoring, suddenly made it look deliciously easy for a second. God bless Rice. He ran off on a solo celly where he seemed to grab his genitalia for a second and then shush the crowd while the rest of his team just wanted to get straight back down to business. There was a Martinelli angle drive. The game was so open. By the way, Aidan Heaven, the 18-year-old debutant for Manchester United, come through the Arsenal Academy, moved to Manchester in the transfer window. He seemed to be everywhere. He delighted in shutting down the club that he supported as a kid. Ødegaard had a late chance. Raya poured the ball off the line from a spiralling Bruno shot, and that was that. Really, just a spiralling sense of frustration, sense of Arsenal missed opportunity, really. 10th draw of the season for the Gunners. 7 points dropped in the last 9 in the crucial heat of what we were told was a title race. And this is how the title campaign ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper at Old Trafford, dropping points for the third successive Premier League game. I think Liverpool need 16 points to guarantee the Premier League title. That's if Arsenal win their remaining 10 games. God bless Arteta. He'd said he'd give up on the title race over my dead body. Here, he stormed off his post-match interview and asked about whether he's conceding. Dude couldn't bring himself to say the words, and not to get too morbid and, is the word necrophilia-ish on your Raw. I think we're in the exhuming the corpse from the coffin stage of the Arsenal season. They're set to finish second. Please God, for the third straight season. Bonnie Renee wrote a great piece this weekend that it's still some feat what Arsenal are achieving. If they do finish second, they'll be the third most consistently successful version of Arsenal ever, going all the way back to 1904. They're honestly like an English Buffalo Bills. This is where they are, Raw. The Pepsi to others' Coke. And I'll say it's not bad business to be Pepsi. That's from someone whose team is RC Cola.
I think that's right, and it's something that's forgotten in football really easily, is that success can be comparative. And there's no question that Arsenal should look at the last 3 campaigns with great pride, particularly where they came from when Arteta took over. I think there's loads of reasons for Arsenal to look forward to next season and think they could well be favourites for the title going in. Manchester City have got a load of work to do on their squad. Chelsea, no idea. Liverpool, it seems likely, will have lost at least one key player, maybe more. And even if the 2 older ones remain, they are kind of now suddenly in their mid-30s. You might look at that and think that Liverpool aren't set up to be kind of a dynasty. Whereas Arsenal have got all this young talent. They've got Bukayo Saka to come back. The Nwaneri's come through. Odegaard. You'd like to think they'd sign a striker. The defence is fantastic. All of the ingredients, the building blocks are there. It is just a case of getting over the line. And I think Arsenal fans, when the disappointment lifts, would probably recognise that at some point you're going to get it right, that the stars will align and Arsenal will get that trophy. And even if it's not the Premier League this season, I think there's a decent chance it's the Champions League. And that's the big question for me that Arteta has to kind of answer now. He's obviously not going to come out and say, I don't think we can win the Premier League. No, I'm never quite sure why anybody asked him that question. I
don't think he can humanly say those words. I think he'd rather swallow a chicken bone than have to say those words.
Why would he say those words? It doesn't gain anything for him to publicly say we're not going to win it. It doesn't help with the fans. It doesn't help with the players. It might alleviate a bit of pressure, I suppose. But then do you want the pressure to be alleviated? I don't know. I think the test comes in April. So Arsenal obviously play Chelsea next week, the weekend that Liverpool have off for the Carabao Cup final, and then the Premier League doesn't resume until the first week of April. Arsenal at that stage will be looking forward to a Champions League quarter-final against Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid. The question for Arteta is, what do you do with your team in the Premier League games? Do you go full strength on the assumption that you have to win all your games to have any hope of catching Liverpool? Or do you say, do you know what, we can take the risk here. We can see if our reserves can beat whoever they play in between those 2 legs of that Champions League game, so as to give ourselves the best possible chance, not of ending this season finishing second in the Premier League, but of ending the season finishing second in the Premier League and winning the Champions League.
Play Raheem Sterling up front, you cowards. That's what. By the way, rather than say, when they ask him, are you conceding the title race, Arteta should just lean into the microphone and just say, the Scottish play, and walk off. I think it'd be amazing. He can't say the words, so he'll just come up with the others. Let's talk United quickly. 32% possession at Old Trafford. Yes, some signs of life in the second half, but really only compared to just how insipid they have been. I think we're now in 2 things can be true territory here. The Glazers and now Ineos are responsible for this fast decline, the leaky roof, the leaky everything. The lack of strategy is really what we're saying. But Amorim has now been at Old Trafford for 118 days. United are 14th, just a point short of the 35 points that should be enough to preserve the Premier League status for another season. And other than that, he's starting to wear the entire club shop. It's hard to see a lot of change week to week. I wanted to ask you, do you think Amorim can draw strength from Arteta's experience at Arsenal? Arteta too was on the brink of being fired. Arteta too had just so much deadwood in his squad. Somehow he unlocked the logjam, refashioned, challenged again. Amorim actually addressed this pre-game. He said he fears he will not get the time that Arteta got.
There are parallels. I think United's malaise runs deeper than Arsenal's did. Arsenal weren't great when Arteta took over, but they were still competing for the European places at least, whereas if you look at United now, it's not just the scale of the climb, it's all the people already ahead of them on the path. That's the problem. I think Amorim will take great strength from the fact that Arteta has been in charge of a major Premier League team that's underperformed for a long time, 4 or 5 years, and he's still got most of his natural hair colour. I think that might be quite important to Ruben Amorim. As a man with jet black hair, he'll want to keep that. The worry is, he's quite right. He's quite right to say that the risk is he doesn't get enough time. United is not as patient a place as Arsenal. It's not a club that was in such desperate need for unity as Arsenal. That's the issue at United. There is a fairly sort of significant chance that what happens is that Amorim gets through this season, and don't get me wrong, this was a positive result for Manchester United. I actually thought second half they played really well, created lots of chances, probably should have won the game, and on the XG, Rog, the true measure of a football match, United won. They created better chances than Arsenal, despite all of Arsenal's possession, and that's legitimate to do. So this has been a good weekend for Manchester United. The problem is that no matter if there's 3 or 4 other good weekends for United between now and the end of the season, they will probably finish in the bottom half. They may well finish 13th, 14th, even 15th. If West Ham win the Monday game, United will be down in 15th in the Premier League, which is astonishing. And the problem is that as soon as there's a setback next season, all of the things that Amorim has done in his first 118 days, all of the failure to make progress, the absence of signs of recovery, that will be used to say, right, you've now had half a season and a summer, things aren't getting better. And suddenly he's under pressure. That's what happened with Ten Hag, it's what happened with Solskjaer, it's what happened to an extent even with Louis van Gaal years and years and years ago. Amorim really needed to hit the ground running. The fact that he stumbled so much for so long over the last few months, I think basically has probably used up all of the patience he was allowed.